All right, we improved to 5-0 in our last 5 board member tier package bets on Pt.2. And the link for today's board member tier package bet is in the description section below. $1,000 bettors are up over $4,500 during that span. Now, the board member tier is an all-inclusive package that I offer on my website. And not only do you get access to my board member tier package bet itself, you also get access to every single bet that I give out on that webpage all the way through the end of February. Now, if you're not signed up for that package, or if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm going to explain a little bit more about that in just a moment. But before we go ahead and move on, just want to take a quick time out and welcome you to the video. My name is Brock Page, and I do sports picks for free right here on YouTube. I also sell my personal bets on Brockpage.com. And I have packages on that website beginning at just $1.99. Now, the purpose of these free YouTube videos is to provide you with free informational sports betting content. And it's also designed to generate interest in signing up for a membership on my website. Now, you may be wondering what the difference is between what I do here on YouTube and what I do on my website. Well, what I do here on YouTube is I'll handicap the entire slate of games in any given sport, side, and total, or at least most of the games. And then what I do on my website is I actually share with you which one of these free YouTube picks on my channel that I'm actually betting on personally. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some free content here. We're going to go ahead and start off with Syracuse taking on Notre Dame. And that's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Notre Dame is -5 with the total at 145.5. Now, the Irish are 11-1 straight up at home this year. They've done a real nice job defensively in front of their home fans. Notre Dame's allowing only 64 points a game at home. And they also covered the point spread in 7 out of their last 10 ball games at any location. Now, scoring-wise, Blake Wesley is averaging over 14.5 points per contest, along with 3 rebounds and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Dane Goodwin's one of the better three-point shooters in the ACC. He's drilling nearly 47% of his 3 balls. He's also scoring 14 points a game as well. And speaking of three-pointers, the Irish are currently in the top 35 in the nation in offensive three-point percentage. They're taking on a Syracuse team who wins only 33% of their road games. They also failed to cover the point spread recently against the likes of Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, and Pitt. Now, the Orange, they've struggled a bit defensively on the road this year. Well, I wouldn't say a bit. They've definitely struggled defensively on the road this season. They're allowing nearly 75 points a game when they travel. And they're also amongst the worst in the conference in road defensive rebounding. Now, total-wise, Syracuse is 7-2 to the under in their last 9 when traveling. Meanwhile, Notre Dame has gone nearly 70% to the under on their home court this year. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Notre Dame -5 in the under 145.5. Next matchup, not on our big screen, but it is going to be Texas Arlington versus Troy. And that's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Troy's -4 with the total at 134.5. And aside from going 9-2 straight up in their last 11 at home, the Trojans have played some terrific defense at home. Troy's allowing just 61 points a game in the Trojan arena. And they're limiting their competition to just 38% shooting from the field there. Now, scoring-wise, Efe Odigi is averaging 11.5 points a game along with 6 rebounds. Meanwhile, Duke Dean is averaging just about double-digit points per contest himself, along with 2 boards and 3 assists. And speaking of offensive production, the Trojans are averaging over 75 points a game in front of their home crowd. They're taking on a Texas Arlington team who lost 11 of 14 on the road this season, and they averaged only 64 points a game in those contests. Now, equally as bad, the Mavericks are shooting just 40% from the field in those road contests. When it comes to the total in this one, the Mavs saw 6 out of their last 10 meetings with Troy fall under the posted number. So if you're into historical trends, you certainly want to think about that one there. Meanwhile, the Trojans on the other side of things, they are 6-3 to the under in their last 9 at home. I'm going to lean toward Troy -4 and the under 134.5. Next matchup, it is going to be TCU versus Texas. And that's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Texas is -8.5, totals 128. Now, the Longhorns have been impossible to score against in their own building. Texas actually leads the entire country in fewest points allowed per contest at home. They're giving up only 51 points a game at the Irwin Center, and they're limiting their opponents to just 38% shooting from the field there. Now, when it comes to offensive production in this one, Timmy Allen scoring nearly a dozen points a game, along with 6 rebounds and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Andrew Jones, he's scoring over 10.5 points per contest himself, along with a couple of boards. Now, when it comes to shooting from the stripe here, Texas is also drilling over 76% of their free throws. So when you put them to the line, they're going to make you pay. Now, they're taking on a TCU squad who lost 3 out of their last 4. And they've actually had a tough time with the Longhorns in recent meetings. TCU lost 7 out of their last 10 games against Texas, and they covered the point spread in only 30% of those ball games. Now, the Horned Frogs' biggest issue is their inability to score on the road. They're averaging only 66 points a game when traveling, and they're also shooting just 31% from three land in that same category. Now, total-wise, TCU saw unders recently with Baylor and Iowa State. Meanwhile, Texas is 12-5 to the under in their own arena. I'm going to lean toward Texas -8.5 and the under 128. Next matchup I have for you, it is going to be Wake Forest versus Clemson. And that's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Wake Forest is -2 with a total at 144.5. Now, when it comes to shooting the basketball, there's really not many out there who do it better than the Deeks. Wake Forest is currently in the top 5 in the nation in road offensive field goal percentage. And they're also averaging nearly 79 points a game. Alondas Williams averages just about 20 points per contest, along with 6 rebounds and 5 assists. Meanwhile, Jake LaRavia is making 43% of his three-pointers and also scores 14.5 points a game. Now, they're taking on a Clemson team who's on a 6-game losing streak themselves. And they also successfully covered the point spread just once during that span I just mentioned. Now, in addition to all that, the Tigers have struggled a bit grabbing offensive boards at home. They're actually more toward the bottom of the barrel in the ACC with regard to home offensive rebounding. So you certainly want to think about that one there. Now, when it comes to the total in this one, Clemson did go 10-3 to the over in their last 13 on the road. Meanwhile, Wake Forest is 60% to the over in their last 10 at any location. I'm going to lean toward Wake Forest -2 in the over 144.5. Next matchup, it is going to be West Virginia versus Iowa State, 7 p.m. East. Iowa State's -5.5, totals 132. Now, the Cyclones won their last 2 straight. They've also got a 765 win percentage in their own building. Isaiah Brockington's making 40% of his three-pointers and also scores 17 points a game. Meanwhile, Tyrese Hunter scoring 11 points a night himself, along with 3 boards and 4 assists. Now, they're taking on a West Virginia team who gives up way too many points on the road. The Mountaineers allow 77 points a game when traveling, and in addition to that, they also struggled with road defensive boards. Now, offensively, on the other end of the court, the Mountaineers are shooting the basketball quite poorly. They're definitely shooting the ball quite poorly on the road. They're making just 39% of their field goals away from Morgantown this year. Now, when it comes to the total in this one, West Virginia's 8-1 to the over in their last 9 on the road, believe it or not. They're also 8-2 to the over in their last 10 meetings with Iowa State. So once again, if you're into historical trends, plenty of overs to go around. Meanwhile, the Cyclones on the other side of things, they averaged over 74 points a game in their last 10 meetings with West Virginia. I'm going to lean toward Iowa State -5.5 and the over 132. Next game, little Big East action. I'm talking about Xavier versus Providence, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Providence is -2 with a total at 139.5. Now, the Friars have lost just one game since January 4th, and they've been virtually unbeatable at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. Providence is currently 14-1 straight up on their home court, and they're led by Nate Watson, who scores over 14 points a game along with 5 rebounds. Meanwhile, Jared Bynum is making nearly 46% of his three-pointers and also scores a dozen points a game. Be on the lookout for Bynum when he shoots from three-land. He can get hot. When he's hot, he is dangerous. Now, defensively on the other end of the court, Providence allows only 66 points a game at home. They're taking on a Xavier program who really doesn't score a whole lot when traveling themselves. These guys are averaging only 68 points a game on the road, and they've also had a pretty tough time grabbing offensive boards away from home. Now, total-wise, 3 out of Xavier's last 4 did get over the posted number. They're also 60% to the over in their last 10 against Providence. Meanwhile, the Friars on the other side, they are 60% to the over at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. I'm going to lean toward Providence -2 in the over 139.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Houston versus Tulane, and that's going to be an 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Houston's -8.5 with the total at 137. But I'll tell you what, as good as Houston's been this season, they've actually had a tough time covering the number here lately. They're just 2-4 against the spread in their last 6 ball games, and they're actually covering in only 50% of their road games this year. So although these guys have been really good, when it comes to covering the number, it's kind of a coin flip. It's kind of a coin toss. They're taking on a Tulane squad who's been excellent against the number here recently themselves. The Green Waves 7-1 against the spread in their last 8. And they're also amongst the best in the country in shooting the 3-ball. As a matter of fact, the Green Waves making 41% of their 3-pointers at home. That's as a team. And they're currently in the top 10 in the nation in that particular category. Jalen Forbes, he's making 40% of his shots from 3-land, 16 points a game for the guard. Meanwhile, Jaden Coleman, he's drilling a staggering 49% of his shots from beyond the arc himself. No surprise here. Tulane scoring over 78 points a game in front of their home crowd. Now, total-wise, once again, no surprise here. Tulane 64% to the over as the home team. They also went 6-1 to the over in their last 7 at any location. Meanwhile, 4 out of Houston's last 6 got over the line themselves. The Cougs have also gone 75% to the over when traveling. I'm going to lean toward Tulane, +8.5, and the over 137. Next contest, going to be a little bit of some more Big East action. I'm talking about Butler versus Seton Hall. That's going to be an 8:30 p.m. Eastern start time. Seton Hall is -9.5 with the total at 129. The Pirates did get the W in 4 out of their last 6 ball games. Victories over the likes of DePaul, Xavier, and Creighton. Now, Seton Hall is also winning 79% of their home games this year. They're led by Jared Roden, who scores 15.5 points per contest, along with 7 rebounds. Meanwhile, Miles Cale, he's averaging just about double-digit points per contest himself, along with 3 rebounds. Now, the Pirates are scoring 78 points a game at home. They're actually amongst the better teams in the Big East in offensive rebounding. They're taking on a Butler team who lost 5 out of their last 7. And in addition to that, they also have a road win percentage of just .333. Now, the Bulldogs have been pretty bad this year with the ball in their hands. They're scoring only 62 points a game on the road, so really struggling getting on the scoreboard away from home. And they're actually making only 40% of their field goals when they travel as well. So overall, just a disaster offensively when these guys travel. Now, total-wise, 7 out of Butler's last 9 road games did get over the posted number. The Bulldogs also went 80% to the over in their last 10 meetings at any location. Meanwhile, Seton Hall on the other side of things, they saw overs recently with Villanova and Xavier. I'm going to lean towards Seton Hall, -9.5, and the over 129. Next matchup, it is going to be Cincinnati versus UCF. And that's going to be a 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off. UCF's -2 at home, totals 140.5. And although Cincinnati's a very tough opponent, the UCF Knights have been really good in Orlando this season. The Knights are currently 12-3 straight up in their own arena, and they've limited Cincy to just 64 points a game in their last 10 head-to-head meetings. As a matter of fact, the Knights are giving up only 62 points per contest at home this year, and they're limiting their competition to just 40% shooting from the field there. Now, scoring-wise, Darren Green Jr. is averaging over 13.5 points per contest, along with 2 rebounds and 40% shooting from three-land. Meanwhile, Darius Perry, he's scoring 11 points a game himself, along with 3 boards and 4 assists. They're taking on a Bearcats team who lost 3 out of their last 4, and they've really struggled shooting the basketball on the road. As a matter of fact, Cincy's making only 38% of their field goals when they travel, and in addition to that, they're also scoring just 66 points a game on the road. Now, total-wise, Cincinnati saw 7 out of their last 10 meetings with UCF fall under the posted total. Meanwhile, the Knights on the other side of things, they saw 4 out of their last 7 fall under the posted total themselves. I'm going to lean toward UCF -2 and the under 140.5. Next ball game, it is going to be LSU versus Kentucky, and that's going to be a 9 o'clock Eastern start time. The University of Kentucky, they are -7.5, totals 142. Now, the Wildcats have been pretty dominant in the Allen Fieldhouse this year. Actually, it's not pretty dominant. They've been absolutely dominant because they are a perfect 16-0 straight up at home this year, and they're arguably the best rebounding team in the game right now. They're currently in the top 10 in home defensive boards, and they're also in the top 15 in offensive rebounding as well. Now, Oscar Tshiebwe, he's averaging over 15 rebounds a game, along with 16 points. Meanwhile, Kellen Grady, he's scoring 12 points a game himself, along with 45% shooting from downtown. And speaking of shooting the basketball, the Wildcats are actually in the top 5 in the nation in offensive field goal percentage. These guys are scoring nearly 88 points a game at home. Now, they're taking on an LSU team who really just isn't built for a track meet on the road. The Tigers are averaging only 66 points a game offensively when traveling. Really not doing a great job getting on the scoreboard. And they're actually shooting just 27% from three-land in that same category. So very little threat shooting the 3 ball on the road as well. Now, when it comes to wins and losses here, LSU's gotten the W in only 2 out of their last 8 road games. When it comes to the number in this one, plenty of overs here for LSU lately. They're 7-1 to the over in their last 8 ball games. 60% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Kentucky. And speaking of the Wildcats on the other side, they've averaged 78 points per contest in their last 10 meetings with the Tigers. Kentucky also saw overs more recently against the likes of Alabama, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. I'm going to lean toward Kentucky -7.5 and the over 142. Next ball game, it is going to be Virginia Tech versus Georgia Tech. And that's going to be a 9 o'clock Eastern start time. Va Tech is -6, totals 132. And as good as the Hokies have been, well, they're covering the number in only 40% of their road games this year. So, laying a couple 3-pointers here on the road could get kind of dicey. And I'll tell you what, speaking of road games, VT really doesn't score a whole lot when traveling. These guys are averaging only 66 points a game away from home this year, and they've actually done a poor job of rebounding offensively away from home. They're taking on a Georgia Tech squad who did cover the point spread in their last 2 straight themselves, and they're also limiting their competition to just 29% shooting from 3-land at home. Now, offensively, Michael DeVoe is scoring 18.5 points per contest, along with 4 rebounds and 3 assists. Meanwhile, Jordan Usher is scoring over 14 points a game himself, along with 6 rebounds and a couple assists as well. And when it comes to head-to-head meetings between these 2 squads, the Yellow Jackets held Virginia Tech to just 65 points a game in their last 10 contests against each other. When it comes to the total in this one, Georgia Tech saw 3 out of their last 4 ball games fall under the posted number. They're also 6-3 to the under in their last 9. Meanwhile, Virginia Tech, they saw their last 4 straight fall under the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Georgia Tech +6 and the under 132. Next matchup, it is going to be Wisconsin versus Minnesota, 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Wisconsin's -5 on the road, totals 135. And even though the Badgers are laying a couple of baskets on the road here, I really don't have a whole lot of concerns about them covering this number. I think it's a very attainable number to cover. They're actually 7-2 straight up as the official road team this year. They're also 10-2 straight up in all of their contests away from home. Obviously, that includes neutral site games. But when these guys are away from Madison, they win. They don't lose a whole lot. And speaking of contests away from Madison, these guys are actually covering in 75% of those ball games away from home as well. So when these guys travel, really no issue there. Now, Johnny Davis, he's scoring over 20.5 points per contest, along with 8 rebounds and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Brad Davison, he's scoring 14.5 points per contest himself, along with 4 rebounds. Now, they're taking on a Minnesota team who lost 7 out of their last 9. And they're covering in only 38% of those contests. Now, the Gophers really haven't scored much in front of their home crowd this year. They're averaging only 69 points a game at the Williams Arena. And they've also done a bad job of rebounding offensively there. Now, total-wise, 5 out of Minnesota's last 8 contests fell under the posted number. They're also 80% to the under in their last 10 against the Badgers. Meanwhile, Wisconsin, on the other side, they actually held Minnesota to just 60 points per contest in those 10 head-to-head meetings I just referred to. Wisconsin also saw unders recently with Michigan State, Penn State, and this very Minnesota team. I'm going to lean toward Wisconsin -5 and the under 135. Next contest, it is going to be Wyoming versus Colorado State. And that's going to be a 9 o'clock Eastern start time. Colorado State's -6.5, totals 146. Now, I do think the Rams are in a real nice spot to cover here. They won 5 out of their last 6 contests, and they've been nearly impossible to beat at home. As a matter of fact, the Rams are 12-1 straight up in front of their home crowd. They're amongst the best in the country in shooting the basketball on their home court. And as a matter of fact, these guys are making 51% of their field goals at the Moby Arena, and that puts them in the top 15 in the nation in that particular category. David Roddy, he's also making 46% of his three-pointers and averages nearly 20 points a game. Meanwhile, teammate John Tanji, he's draining nearly 43% of his three-pointers as well, and Tanji's also scoring double-digit points per contest. Now, when it comes to free throw percentage, well, these guys are also in the top 10 in the nation in shooting from the stripe. They're taking on a Wyoming team on the other side of things who really, they haven't done a great job covering the point spread in recent weeks. Now, the Cowboys failed to cover in 3 out of their last 4 contests, and they've also allowed 76 points a game in their last 10 meetings with Colorado State. So when it comes to head-to-head meetings, Wyoming's been, pretty lax defensively. And, well, there's really not a whole lot that Wyoming does wrong, especially with regard to their stats this season. But you just got to keep in mind these guys are scoring only 69 points a game on the road this year, and they're making only 31% of their three-pointers in that same category. Now, total-wise, 8 out of Wyoming's last 11 road games did fall under the line. They also saw unders recently with New Mexico, San Jose State, and Fresno State. Meanwhile, the Rams on the other side, they are 60% to the under in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Colorado State, -6.5, and the under 146. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup of the show. It is going to be Washington versus Washington State, and that's going to be an 11 o'clock Eastern start time. Now, Wazoo's -9.5, totals 136, and despite the Cougars' recent skid, well, Wazoo still has a winning record at home, and they played some exceptional defense in front of their home fans. Now, the Cougs allow only 63 points a game on their home court this year, and they're doing a pretty nice job this season defending the field goal. Now, offensively, Michael Flowers is averaging over 13 points a game, along with 3 rebounds and 3 assists. Meanwhile, Tyrell Roberts, he's scoring 11 points a game himself, along with 2 boards and a couple assists. Now, when it comes to head-to-head meetings, the Cougs are averaging 72 points a game in their last 10 contests with the Huskies. And speaking of UW, they're on a 3-game losing streak themselves. And they're also winning only 33% of their road games. Now, the Huskies have been pretty lax defensively this year. They're allowing over 78 points a game when they travel, and they're also letting their opponents connect on 48% of their field goals against them in that very same category. Now, when it comes to the scoring in this one, 6 out of Washington's last 9 road games did, in fact, get over the posted number. They also went 70% to the over in their last 10 at any location. Meanwhile, Washington State, on the other side of things, they saw overs recently with UCLA and Cal. I'm going to lean toward Wazoo minus 9.5 and the over 136. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on Pt.2. Now, if you guys do end up getting a membership here today on my website, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Wednesday to you. Happy hump day to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at brockpage.com.